The forest was quiet that evening, too quiet for his liking. James walked along the narrow dirt path, carrying his small bag of supplies. He had been living on the edge of the town for years. Away from noise and crowds, he liked silence, but tonight the silence felt heavy, almost unnatural. The air was thick, and he kept feeling as if someone or something was watching him. He stopped when he heard a soft sound, like a whimper. At first he thought it was an animal, maybe a stray pup or an injured bird, but the sound carried something else. It was softer, almost like a child crying. His heart beat faster, curiosity mixing with unease. He followed the sound, stepping carefully through bushes and trees. There, near a fallen log, he saw something strange. It was small, curled up, and trembling. As he moved closer, the shape lifted its head, and his breath caught in his chest. It was not a human child. She had big glowing eyes, a pale bluish skin that shimmered faintly under the moonlight. Her hair was thin, silver like threads of light, falling messily over her small shoulders. Her clothes were torn, strange fabric that looked too delicate for the wild. She clutched a broken piece of metal in her hands, holding it close as if it was her treasure. Her eyes widened when she saw him, full of fear. James froze, his mind racing. An alien here, right in front of him, looking as fragile as any lost child. He raised his hand slowly, trying not to scare her. "It's okay," he whispered, though he was not sure she could understand. The girl shivered, pulling back against the log, her glowing eyes never leaving his face. He looked around quickly. The forest was empty, silent. Why was she here, alone, hurt, and frightened? Questions filled his mind, but the strongest thought was simple. She was just a child. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small piece of bread. Slowly, he placed it on the ground and slid it closer. The girl's eyes flickered between him and the food. Her thin fingers trembled. Then she reached out and grabbed it. She sniffed it carefully, then took a small bite. For a moment, her fear softened, and James saw something else: hunger, relief, hope. She ate quickly, holding the bread as if it was her first meal in days. James felt a pang in his chest. Whatever she was, whoever she was, she needed help. He could not just walk away. He crouched down, speaking gently. "You're safe. I won't hurt you." She tilted her head, not fully understanding, but his calm voice seemed to reach her. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed in the distance. A branch breaking. Heavy steps somewhere deeper in the forest. James froze, his eyes scanning the trees. The girl gasped, her small body shaking. She clutched the broken metal piece tighter, her glowing eyes filled with terror. Who was out there, searching for her, hunting her? James's heart pounded. He knew danger was close. He moved quickly, picking her up, though she struggled at first. "Quiet," he whispered. "I'll keep you safe." Her resistance weakened, maybe because fear told her she had no choice. He carried her back to a small wooden cabin near the edge of the woods. The night felt longer than ever, shadows stretching, every sound making him turn his head. When they reached the cabin, he shut the door quickly and bolted it. The girl sat in the corner, watching him with cautious eyes. She was still scared, but she no longer looked like she wanted to run. James sat across from her, his mind spinning. Who was she? Where did she come from? And who was searching for her? He had no answers. Only a child in need, and the sense that his life had just changed forever. Outside, the forest whispered, the silence broken now and then by distant cracks. Something was moving out there, getting closer. The girl held the piece of metal close to her chest. Her glowing eyes slowly grew heavy with sleep. James stared at her, realizing he had taken a step into a world he did not understand. But one thing was clear: he had found a little alien girl, and nothing would ever be the same again. ****. The next morning came slowly, gray light pushing through the cracks of the old cabin walls. James had barely slept, his ears sharp for every sound outside. When he finally looked at the corner of the room, the little alien girl was still there, curled up like a frightened bird. Her silver hair glowed faintly in the dim light, and her small chest rose and fell softly. For the first time she looked peaceful. James sighed and rubbed his tired eyes. "What do I do with you?" he whispered to himself. He knew keeping her was dangerous, but leaving her out there alone was unthinkable. She had no one, and clearly, someone had been looking for her in the woods last night. He could still remember the sound of heavy footsteps echoing in the dark. He went to the small stove and heated some water. The faint smell of porridge filled the cabin, and soon the girl's big glowing eyes blinked open. She sat up, hugging her strange metal piece tight. Her gaze followed his every move, like she was waiting to see if he would hurt her. James turned and placed a wooden bowl near her. "Food," he said gently, pointing at the bowl. The girl tilted her head, not sure, but the smell made her crawl closer. She picked it up with both hands, sniffing, and then took a cautious sip. Her face softened, a quiet hum escaping her lips. James couldn't help but smile. "That's better, huh?" he said, his voice calm and warm. The girl glanced at him, then gave the smallest nod. It was the first sign of trust, and it made his chest tighten with something he hadn't felt in a long time. She was still afraid, but she was starting to believe he wasn't a threat. As the hours passed, James tried small things to connect. He placed objects on the floor, an apple, a spoon, a cup, and spoke their names slowly. The girl listened, her glowing eyes wide, then repeated in her soft, broken voice, "App. Play," she whispered, pointing to it. Her accent was strange, but her effort made him laugh gently. Soon, she began to mimic his actions. When he drank from a cup, she tried the same, though she spilled half of it. When he wiped his hands, she copied clumsily, her silver hair falling into her face. James found himself chuckling, and for a moment, it felt like he wasn't hiding from danger, but simply caring for a lost child. The bond between them grew with every small moment. At night, however, the fear returned. The girl woke often, trembling and whispering in her alien tongue. Her voice was soft but urgent, as if she was calling for someone. James could not understand the words, but he understood the fear. Every time, he would kneel beside her and whisper, "It's okay. Safe here." One night, when thunder rolled over the forest, she suddenly clutched his sleeve, her small glowing eyes filled with tears, and she pressed the broken metal piece into his hand. James looked at it closely. It was not just metal. It looked like part of a device, smooth with faint markings he couldn't read. She pointed to it, then to herself, then to the sky outside the window. "Yours?" James asked softly. She shook her head, then whispered, "Home." Her voice cracked, and James finally understood. It was a piece of something from her world, maybe from a ship, maybe something she carried for comfort. Whatever it was, it tied her to where she came from. His chest tightened again. She wasn't just lost, she was far from her people, far from her home, and yet here she was, depending on him, a simple man who had no idea how to protect her from whatever hunted her. Still, he couldn't walk away. The bond had already formed. Strong and silent, the next morning, he took her outside cautiously. The air was fresh, the forest alive with birdsong, but James stayed alert. The girl held his hand tightly, her glowing eyes darting at every shadow. He showed her the small stream nearby, and her face lit up at the sight of water rushing over stones. She crouched down, touched it with wonder, and laughed softly, the sound like music. James felt something stir in his chest he hadn't heard. Laughter in his home for years. In that moment, it didn't matter that she was alien. She was a child, innocent, curious, and he was the one keeping her safe. The strange bond between them was no longer fragile, it was real. But as the sun set again, the forest returned to silence, and silence meant danger. James noticed fresh footprints near the edge of his land, larger than his own boots. He knew then that whoever had been searching last night hadn't stopped. They were closer now, and soon they would find him. Inside the cabin, the girl leaned against him, her small frame finally relaxed. She trusted him completely now. James stared at the door, his mind heavy with worry. The bond he had formed with her was unbreakable, but it also meant he could not turn back. He had chosen to protect her, and that choice would change everything. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. The nights grew heavier around the cabin. James noticed it first in the silence. A silence too deep to be natural. The forest was alive with crickets, owls, and the soft rustle of leaves. But lately, those sounds had vanished. Only the wind moved, carrying with it a strange feeling, like unseen eyes were always watching. The little alien girl felt it too. She would sit near the window and stare into the darkness, her glowing eyes narrowing. Sometimes she whispered words in her own language, soft and trembling, as if speaking to someone far away. James tried to listen, to catch a meaning, but the words slid past his understanding. Still, he could feel her fear in every broken syllable. One night, he woke to the sound of faint tapping. His hand reached for the rifle he kept under the bed. The tapping wasn't from inside, it was coming from the woods. Deliberate, slow, and strange, he moved quietly to the door, the girl clutching his sleeve tightly, when he opened a crack to look outside. The forest was empty, yet the tapping continued, echoing between the trees. He shut the door fast and bolted it again, his heart racing. The girl whispered urgently, pointing to the broken piece of metal she always carried. Her voice rose, fell, her alien tongue spilling out in fast waves. James couldn't understand. But he knew one thing, whoever was out there was searching for her, and they were close. Too close. During the day, the signs became clearer, strange footprints near the stream. Not human, too large and deep in the soil. Shadows that vanished when he tried to look directly at them. And once, as he returned from chopping wood, he found small marks scratched onto the side of the cabin. Symbols he couldn't read, curved lines and dots that seemed alive in the sunlight. The girl froze when she saw them. Her face paled, and she shook her head violently, pulling him away. She pressed her hand to her chest and whispered one word, over and over, "Hunters. Hunters." James felt a chill run down his spine. That night, the whispers began. At first, he thought it was just the wind, but soon he realized it was voices, low and broken, drifting through the trees. They spoke in a language he didn't know, but there was rhythm, a chant, like something calling. The girl hid under the table, her hands over her ears, her glowing eyes filled with tears. James pulled her close, whispering, "Stay quiet. Stay with me." Every time the voices rose, he felt the walls of his cabin tremble. The fire flickered low, shadows stretching unnaturally long across the floor. It was as if the forest itself had turned against him. The girl whispered her alien words again, this time pressing the metal shard into his palm. She wanted him to hold it, as if it could protect him too. James gripped it tight. He didn't understand what it was, but he saw how much it meant to her. The voices faded after hours, melting back into silence. But silence was no comfort anymore. It meant only that the watchers were waiting. Days blurred into nights, the bond between James and the girl growing stronger, but so did the tension. He taught her new words, safe, home, and friend. She repeated them often, clinging to the meanings like a lifeline. But whenever the whispers returned at night, she forgot those words. Trembling like a cornered bird, James promised her again and again, "I'll protect you. I won't let them take you." One evening, while gathering water from the stream, James caught sight of a figure in the distance, tall, cloaked in shadows, unmoving, just watching. His instincts screamed to run, but when he blinked, the figure was gone. Only the ripple of water remained. He hurried back to the cabin, sweat on his brow despite the cold. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat with the rifle across his lap. The girl curled beside him, clutching her shard of metal. Outside, the whispers returned, louder than before, circling the cabin. James could almost feel their breath against the wooden walls. And through it all, one thought pounded in his head. This was only the beginning. The girl lifted her face, her glowing eyes locking on his. Her voice cracked, but she said one word in broken English. Danger. James swallowed hard, his hands tightening on the rifle. Danger was here, and it was closing in from all sides. Asterisk, the fourth night was the Sia. Worst, the whispers had not stopped since sunset. Circling the cabin like a storm of shadows, James sat with his rifle ready. The little alien girl pressed close against him, her glowing eyes wide with fear. The fire burned low, casting strange shapes on the wooden walls, every creak of the kumbu, floor and crack of the wind felt like a signal that danger was about to break inside. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the forest grew silent, the whispers faded. The wind stopped, even the trees seemed to hold their breath. James frowned, his instincts screaming that this silence was not safety, it was something else. He kept the rifle raised, his heart beating fast. The girl clutched his sleeve tighter than ever, her small fingers digging into his arm. A sound broke the silence, steady and strong, not whispers, not tapping, but footsteps, heavy and deliberate. Walking toward the cabin, James stood slowly, pointing the rifle at the door, his pulse pounding in his ears. The girl gasped, pulling at his arm, shaking her head, as if she knew what was coming. The footsteps stopped right outside. Knock, knock, the sound was firm. Controlled, almost royal, James froze, caught between fear and confusion. Hunters would not knock, they would break in. Whoever stood at the door was different. With shaking hands, James unbolted the lock. His rifle still raised. The door creaked open, and the cold night air rushed inside. Two figures stood there, tall, elegant, their forms half hidden by cloaks that shimmered in the moonlight. Their faces were unlike anything he had seen alien. Yes, but beautiful in a strange way. Their eyes glowed softly, filled with power and urgency. The little girl gasped and ran forward, her silver hair flashing in the firelight. "Mother!" she cried in her broken tongue, her voice trembling with both relief and fear. The two women dropped their hoods, revealing faces carved with grace and strength. One had dark, flowing hair with streaks of silver, her eyes sharp but wet with emotion. The other's hair was braided tightly, her gaze calm and commanding. James lowered his rifle slowly, shock spreading through him. So these were not hunters, these were her people. Her guardians, maybe even her family. The taller woman bent down, gathering the girl into her arms. The child clung tightly, her glowing eyes filling with tears. The woman whispered in their strange language, her voice trembling. James stood frozen, watching, unsure whether to feel relief or fear. The second woman turned her gaze on him, and it was like staring into the sun. Her eyes were piercing, weighing his soul. For a long moment, no one spoke, the silence pressing against his chest. Finally, the taller woman looked at James and spoke in halting but clear words. "You kept her safe," she said, her voice carrying both gratitude and authority. James swallowed, nodding slowly. I found her alone in the forest," he answered, his voice hoarse. "She was starving. Afraid, I couldn't leave her." The woman's eyes softened, but the second woman's gaze stayed sharp. "You risked much," the second said, her voice low and commanding. "Do you understand what you have done?" James blinked, not sure how to answer. All he had done was follow his heart, protect a child. But the weight in her voice told him this was bigger than anything he had imagined. The little girl broke away from the woman's arms and ran back to James. She took his hand and pressed it tightly, refusing to let go. The two women exchanged a glance, silent but filled with meaning. The taller one finally spoke again, her voice softer now. "She is no ordinary child," she said. "You should not have found her. But fate has chosen differently." James felt his chest tighten. "What do you mean?" he asked, though a part of him wasn't sure he wanted the answer. The woman's eyes glowed faintly as she whispered, "She is precious. More than you can imagine." The fire flickered, shadows stretching long across the floor. The girl stayed at James's side, holding his hand, her glowing eyes filled with trust. The women stepped fully into the cabin, closing the door behind them. For the first time in days, James no longer felt whispers outside. But inside, the air was heavier, carrying secrets that could change everything. The second woman stood tall, scanning the cabin as if checking for danger. Then she turned back to James, her expression firm. "You must understand," she said. "The hunters will not stop. They will come for her, and now they will come for you." James's grip on the girl's hand tightened. He had suspected it, but hearing the words spoken aloud made the danger more real. The taller woman placed a hand on his shoulder. "You showed courage," she said gently. "But courage comes with cost." James looked at the girl. Her small frame pressed close to him. He thought of the nights filled with fear, the whispers, the bond they had formed. No matter what the cost, he knew one thing he could not abandon. Her now, asterisk, 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 asterisk. The fire crackled low, the cabin filled with silence that carried heavy weight. James sat stiff, his hand still wrapped in the little girl's smaller fingers. The two alien women stood close together, their glowing eyes watching him with unreadable expressions. He felt as if he was on trial, as if every choice he had made was being measured. The taller woman finally spoke, her voice calm but layered with sadness. "You do not know who she is, do you?" she asked softly. James shook his head slowly, his throat dry. "All I know is that she was alone, afraid, and needed help," he said, his voice rough. "That was enough for me." The little girl squeezed his hand tighter, leaning against him as if his words were a shield. The second woman stepped forward, her posture straight and commanding. "She is not only a child," she said firmly. "She carries blood that many would kill to possess." James frowned, his heart beating faster. "What do you mean?" he asked, looking from one to the other. The taller woman sighed deeply, her silver-streaked hair falling across her face. "She is the daughter of our line," she said. "Born from a house that rules not by power of weapons, but by wisdom, by knowledge." James stared at the little girl, his mind struggling to piece it together. Royalty, was that what they meant? The second woman nodded as if reading his thoughts. "She is heir," she said, her voice sharp. "One day she may carry the weight of our people on her shoulders." James blinked, stunned. All this time, he had thought she was just a lost, frightened child, but now the truth struck him. Her presence here was no accident. The hunters were not chasing her for survival. They were chasing her because of what she represented. Power, bloodline, future. The little girl's glowing eyes lifted to his. She did not understand every word being spoken, but she felt the tension. She pressed the shard of metal into his palm again, her lips trembling. "Home," she whispered, as if the word itself carried all the weight in her small heart. James felt something twist inside his chest. The taller woman sat down near the fire, her graceful form somehow both strong and weary. "We searched for days," she said. "Our enemies moved faster than we expected. They took her from us, scattered our guard, and we feared she had perished." Her eyes softened, looking at James. "But you, a stranger, a human, you found her and chose kindness, even when you did not know who she was." James looked down, his jaw tightening. "I didn't do it for reward," he said firmly. "I did it because she needed someone." The second woman's eyes softened, though her voice remained steady. "Perhaps that is why fate led her to you," she said. "But fate does not end here. Now you are part of this, whether you choose it or not." James felt the weight of her words settle heavy on his shoulders. He looked at the girl again, and her glowing eyes filled with quiet trust. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. The taller woman's expression grew darker. "The hunters will not stop," she said. "They are already closer than you realize, and they know she is here." James stiffened, gripping the rifle, leaning against the wall. He had expected danger, but hearing it confirmed chilled his blood. Second woman continued, her tone sharper. "They will come in numbers. They will bring fire and steel, and they will not care who stands in their way." She looked directly into his eyes. "If you remain here, you risk death. Not only for yourself, but for her too." James clenched his jaw, the truth cutting deep. He thought of the quiet nights when the girl had learned to say friend and safe. He thought of her laughter by the stream, the way she had clung to him during thunder. She was no longer just a stranger, she was a part of his life now. Leaving her was not an option his heart could accept, but the weight of the choice pressed harder than ever. The taller woman placed a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder. "She belongs with us, with her people," she said softly. "But she has bonded with you in a way that even we cannot undo." The girl shook her head, hiding behind James's arm, refusing to let go. The taller woman's eyes glistened with quiet tears. "She chooses you," she whispered, as if surprised herself. James's chest tightened. The moment heavy with emotion. He had not asked for this. Yet now the bond between them was undeniable. The second woman broke the silence, her tone final. "If you walk away now, your life may return to what it was, quiet and alone. If you stay, you will face dangers beyond your world, dangers you cannot yet imagine." James looked at the girl again, her small hand gripping his tightly. She had found safety in him, trust in him, maybe even hope in him. How could he turn away now, knowing what she was, knowing who she was? He felt the answer rising in him like fire. His decision was forming. Even if he could not yet speak it aloud, the fire popped, sparks rising into the air. The cabin felt smaller, heavier, filled with truths too big for its wooden walls. The woman's eyes never left him, waiting, testing. And James knew one thing clearly: whatever came next, his life was already changed forever. There was no going back to silence, no returning to the man he had been before he found her. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. The night dragged on, heavy and restless. James sat near the fire, his rifle across his lap. The two alien women watching him from across the room. The little girl had fallen asleep against his arm, her small hand gripping his sleeve tightly. Even in her dreams, her glowing eyes flickered faintly under her closed lids, as if even sleep could not take away her fear. The firelight danced across her silver hair, making her look fragile, like a star that could fade at any moment. James's chest tightened. He had spent years living alone, away from others, away from responsibility. Yet now, in just a few days, this small alien child had changed everything. He could not deny the bond they shared, the way she clung to him, the way her trust in him felt unshakable. But with that bond came danger, danger so great it might swallow them all. The taller woman leaned forward, her voice quiet but sharp in the silence. "You cannot keep her safe here," she said. "Hunters are closing in. They will not stop, and when they come, they will burn everything around you." James's jaw tightened, his grip on the rifle hardening. He knew she was right, but the thought of giving the child up tore at him. "She's not just your heir now," he muttered. She's family." The second woman's eyes narrowed. "You speak as if you understand the scale," she said firmly. "She carries bloodlines that kingdoms rise and fall over. Her presence here has already changed your life, but it will also bring ruin if you choose wrongly." James looked at her, his heart pounding. "Then tell me what choice I have," he demanded. "Leave her? Pretend none of this happened?" The girl stirred in her sleep, pressing closer against him. And the answer was already in his chest. The taller woman's face softened, sadness filling her glowing eyes. "You could leave," she whispered. "We would take her back, protect her with our lives, and you would return to your quiet world." Her words were gentle, almost kind, but they cut deep. James imagined it for a moment, returning to silence, chopping wood, eating alone, pretending he never found her. But the thought felt empty, colder than any night he had lived before. The second woman rose to her feet, her voice sharp. "You can stay," she said. "You can stand with us, with her, against what hunts her. But know this, if you stay, you will be hunted too." Her words rang through the cabin like a blade. James felt the truth sink into him. There was no middle path, no easy way out. Either he stepped back into the shadows of his lonely life, or he stepped into a storm that could destroy him. The fire cracked, throwing sparks into the air. James stared at the little girl, sleeping against him. He remembered the first night he found her, trembling in the dark, clutching her shard of metal. He remembered her laughter at the stream, the way she learned to say friend and safe. She had trusted him when she had no one else, and that trust weighed more than fear. He finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "If I walk away now, she will think I abandoned her," he said. "I can't do that. I won't do that." The taller woman closed her eyes, a faint smile of sorrow touching her lips. The second woman studied him with her piercing gaze, then gave a slow nod. "You have made your choice," she said. "Do not regret it when the storm comes." At that moment, the girl stirred again, waking with a soft gasp. Her glowing eyes blinked, confused. Then she saw James beside her. She smiled faintly and whispered, "Safe." The single word, learned from him, made his chest tighten with fierce resolve. He placed his hand gently on her head, whispering back, "Yes, safe," though he knew the battles ahead would be anything but safe. The taller woman finally stood, pulling her cloak tighter. "Then we prepare," she said, her voice stronger. "Now, the hunters will not wait. They know she is here, and soon they will strike." The second woman's hand moved to a blade hidden at her side, the steel glinting faintly in the firelight. James rose too, his rifle in hand, his decision carved into his heart. He was no soldier, no warrior, but he was human, and he would fight. The cabin seemed smaller now, as if it could barely contain the weight of what was coming. The women exchanged a look, silent but clear, then both turned to James. "You will not stand alone," the taller one said. "If you stay with her, you stay with us." James nodded slowly, his gaze shifting to the child who leaned once more against his arm. Whatever storm was coming, he had already chosen where he would stand. Outside, the forest was silent again, but not with peace, only with waiting. The air was heavy, the night pressing close. James knew they had little time, maybe hours, maybe less. The hunters were not whispers anymore. They were marching closer with every breath, and when they arrived, the world he knew would burn away. Still, James felt no fear in his choice, only a fierce, quiet fire in his chest. The little alien girl had given him something he thought he had lost long ago: purpose, connection, family, and for that, he would not abandon her, no matter the cost. The path ahead was dark, but his choice was clear. He would fight, and he would stand. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. The night broke with fire. James had barely finished checking his rifle when the first sound came: a distant horn, deep and hollow, echoing through the forest like a call of death. The little alien girl clung to him, her glowing eyes wide with terror. The two women moved to the windows, their sharp eyes scanning the shadows outside. "They are here," the second woman said firmly, her hand resting on the hilt of her blade. James swallowed hard, forcing his shaking hands to steady. He had hunted deer before, fought storms, survived hard winters, but this was different. This was war at his doorstep, and yet he felt no regret. The girl pressed her shard of metal into his palm, whispering, "Safe," as if giving him strength. Her trust became his courage, and his fear turned into fire. From the trees, figures emerged, tall and armored, their forms half hidden in cloaks that blended with the night. Their eyes glowed faintly, and in their hands they carried weapons that hummed with strange energy. They moved like predators, slow but certain. Surrounding the cabin, the taller woman raised her voice in their language, sharp and commanding. But the hunters did not answer with words. They answered with a roar. A blast of energy struck the cabin's wall, splinters flying into the air. The girl screamed, and James pulled her behind him, his rifle ready. The second woman drew her blade, the metal shining bright even in the dark. The taller one raised her hand, and a faint shimmer of light spread across the doorway like a shield. The cabin shook under the force, but it held, for now. James's heart pounded. But he remembered every moment with the girl, her laughter by the stream, her soft voice saying friend, her trust when she pressed close to him in the night. He knew he was no warrior, but he was human, and humanity's greatest strength was not in weapons, but in heart. He raised his rifle and fired. The shot cracking through the night, one of the hunters stumbled, falling back into the shadows. The women glanced at him with surprise, but also with respect. The battle surged. Energy blasts struck against the shield, shaking the walls. The second woman leapt forward, her blade cutting through the air with deadly precision. James fired again and again, every shot fueled not by training, but by determination. The hunters pressed harder, their growls filling the night. The little girl hid under the table, her glowing eyes fixed on James. She whispered words in her alien tongue, soft prayers carried on trembling lips. Every time James looked at her, his resolve grew stronger. He would not let them take her, not while he still breathed. He fought with the fire of a father protecting his child. At last one of the hunters broke through the doorway, towering and fierce. James turned, his rifle empty. But he did not back down. He swung the butt of the weapon into the hunter's face, staggering it before it could recover. The second woman struck with her blade, dropping the creature to the floor. The girl cried out, rushing into James's arms, and he held her tight. The attackers began to retreat, dragging their wounded, their growls fading into the forest. The taller woman lowered her hand, the shield dissolving into sparks. The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the crackle of the fire. James collapsed to his knees, exhausted, the girl still clinging to him. He had survived. No, they had survived. The two women stood tall, their faces stern but filled with relief. The second one sheathed her blade, looking at James with new respect. You fought as one of us, she said simply. The taller woman knelt, her eyes soft. You chose to protect her, and in doing so, you have earned her trust and ours. James looked down at the girl in his arms, her glowing eyes shining with tears, but also with something brighter. Hope. She touched his chest with her small hand and whispered, family. The word broke something inside him, filling him with warmth he had thought long dead. He pulled her close, his voice low and steady. Yes, family. The women exchanged a glance, silent but full of meaning. Finally, the taller one spoke. You are not bound to this place anymore. Human, if you choose, you may walk away, return to your quiet life. But if you choose to stay with her, you step into a future larger than you can imagine. James thought of the silence of his cabin before she came, the loneliness that had filled his nights. Then he looked at the girl, the bond between them stronger than steel. There was no choice anymore. His heart had already chosen. He rose to his feet, the girl still in his arms. I'm not leaving her, he said firmly. Where she goes, I go. The women nodded, respect shining in their glowing eyes. The taller one whispered, then so be it. And in that moment, James felt the path of his life change forever. Outside, the forest grew quiet again, the danger gone for now. But James knew this was only the beginning of a longer journey. He had stepped into a world far larger than his own, bound not by blood, but by choice. The little girl looked up at him with trust that lit the dark, and James knew he would carry that light wherever the road led. Asterisk, 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 asterisk.